Welcome to Inside New York's Art World. We're at the Pace Gallery tonight, and I'm Barbara Lee Diamonstein, and especially pleased to introduce our two guests tonight. One of them is often referred to as the doyenne of American sculptors. Most of you know her as the creator of mysterious black or white boxes that are readily identified. This must be a Nevelson. Well, this is a Nevelson, and a remarkable one at that. We're especially pleased to have you with us. Our other guest is Arnold Glimcher, president of the Pace Gallery. Arnold Glimcher has been in New York for 13 years, and during the course of that time, he has established himself as one of the most creative and dynamic dealers anywhere. Thank you for having us here. Louise Nevelson is one of the busiest artists in the world. In fact, as Arnold describes, her work pours forth with uninterrupted regularity. She is now engaged in one of the most complex assignments, I assume, that any sculptor has had in the modern era. It is the design of sculpture, architectural ornament, and even more than that. This very morning, a press conference was held in New York City describing that commission. Can you tell us about it?
The church that is built within this new building is on 54th Street and 55th Street.
53rd and 54th.
In Lexington.
And yes.
Yeah.
What Louise is referring to is St. Peter's Church that will be part of the new Citibank skyscraper,
Yeah.
which is a mixed-use development. The corner of that building is St. Peter's Church, and the purpose of today's press conference is to announce what Louise's contribution to that church will be.
Yes. Well, the thing that really pleased me was that I don't think anywhere on earth have they taken the scale of this business building, office building, and encompassed the new building in the corner, a new church that is built like a pyramid. And what the architects have done, which I think is remarkable, is there's a lot of air, and also there's the other enormous building doesn't press down on it, but they've allowed a whole new area. And so I was very, very pleased with that, because there is where I will do the chapel and also do the vestments, and I think, can we say that we're going to do the doors?
Yeah, the bronze doors.
The bronze doors. And so that this pleases me that I feel that I'm going to really do the whole thing. And I don't know, I was told by critics that came that outside of Matisse Chapel, that this is the first time, particularly, of course, in America, but also that I think that this is the first time that anything like this has been done.
Simultaneously, Mrs. Nevelson's completing a 55-foot sculpture for San Francisco that'll be installed in January, a metal piece for the waterfront. Maquettes are underway for a bridge in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Models were just finished for the new Senate office building in Washington, a 100-foot steel sculpture, black steel sculpture. There are about 24 proposals that she's seeing whether or not she likes at this moment. We're now thinking about commissions for 1980.
I have often heard astonished replies from people who were aware of the voluminous output that you have. How many people do you have working with you?
First, let's go back a little, and then we'll come up to this. Nature was kind enough to endow me with a great deal of energy. I mean, so much so it wore me out.
Here's the hovercraft again, spectators participating.
Don't believe that.
And so in the beginning, way back in the Second World War, I think, when you couldn't get materials, and I thought creation, I still think so in any form, is more important than the materials. So when you couldn't get these wonderful materials, I began to see in everything I observed creativity, and that's how I began to pick up things on the street or wherever it was.
We can all attest to that.
Yes. Now, I'd pick it up. Sometimes I'd get up 3, 4 in the morning to be able, before it would disappear, and bring it home. And being strong, I was able to carry beds, the top, the bottom, or chairs or crates or whatever. And then a little later, well, that went on for many, many years, almost 2 now, but now people recognize me. Doesn't quite seem right. It's out of place. But nevertheless, so I would take these into the studio, clean them, prepare them, paint them, and put them together. Because I couldn't afford, at that time, help. And so then I didn't know a wedgie. I knew the form when I saw it, but I didn't know it was called a wedgie. So someone said, that's a wedgie. So then I knew it was a wedgie. But I was visual, you see, and I would select these things through the eye. Then years later, I got some help, not many, someone say, that would, after 20 years or so.
You mean an assistant in the studio?
Not assistant, someone that would paint the wood, which I did for 20 odd years. So I don't call that an assistant. I call that someone that helps to paint the wood. So that's listen, you don't have a right to laugh. And, well, nevertheless, the things that I have really gone through to bring things to fruition is pretty remarkable as I see it in retrospect, because I just had a birthday. I can speak more openly. I mean it. We're serious now. Now the point is that when I reached a certain point, as I said, I got someone to paint things. Then I got someone later to arrange, clean the studio and do these things. And really, dear, I have never had what you call an assistant. I have given the title assistant to Diana, but not because of her work. But she's been with me for so many years and done so many things. She's a Yale graduate, a brilliant girl. I couldn't say, well, she's washing dishes, So I gave her the title, and I think she deserves it. But that's it. And so, of course, another thing that has happened through technology, through the wonderful things that have happened, and I parallel, which I said in the beginning, my life with the times, is I go to Lipping Courts, and they have taken, I don't know how many pictures of me working.
The Foundry is what
the Foundry up in North Haven, Connecticut. And I work with the men, and they have worked with me for years, and I must say that they're marvelous, marvelous. But they also have all the equipment to do things. Now, for instance, say a piece like this. I'll say, first place, they're wonderful. They're supposed to just work and do these things, but there's more to them than that. And especially if they worked with you, they sense what you want. Now, I'll say, Bobby, I want a half circle. They have a machine, and in no time, there's a straight piece put in that machine, and say in a few minutes or a little longer, you get your half circle. Then maybe, because I create spontaneously while I am there, not on a blueprint and not on paper and nothing. And that
Do you ever have models, since there is an architectural...
A maquette, sometimes, yeah, a maquette.
But your work is characterized by, its precision on the one hand, but its development is so spontaneous. How do you...
Yes, well, for me, it's natural. It really is natural. and I'm going to finish about this. Now, for example, here's a piece that's a half circle. That same thing. Then there's a lot of, suppose I didn't quite want this and I wanted to shave it off. They shave it as if it was paper. You see, that's the miracle of this. And I correct another thing. The wooden pieces, I don't call them all boxes, dear. They're, you know, because they're not all boxes. But I do them in the studio, and then they are put together. But when you see a big wall as big as that, that's not one piece, because it would be impossible to bring it in and out. So they are in sections, and then they are placed, you see. And, well, anyway.
I think that's one of the things that people, don't understand. Because if you see a 20-foot wall by Nevelson, they think she can't possibly have made it, but it's made up of 100 boxes, each this big.
And sometimes
so she can handle each of those boxes and columns quite easily and place them in place.
What is the origin of the term environmental art? Many critics see you as the originator and the chief exponent of environmental art. When did you start working with that, in that reference?
Yes. I don't quite remember the year, but I'll tell you the experience, and then that'll cover it. I was doing a show for the Grand Central Moderns, and they had some space like this, and windows and doors, and the desk and chairs and all, and I just conceived that all of this was unnecessary to a work of art. So we threw out everything, and since they had two windows that were parallel, I put a sculpture in one window, so that when I was putting the show on, every piece had to be related to the second piece. That meant there was, in the end, I came to the conclusion that we had one piece. In other words, not only mine, I hope it's in every artist, that the ultimate must be harmony. And if the artist is very well integrated, really integrated, know what they want, know what they're doing, you can put 1,000 pieces together, and it only means you've got one piece of sculpture if you choose, right? And so when I recognized this, fortunately in my life, the gallery people, the museum people have always been very nice to me, and if I had asked for things to be moved out or didn't want to, they really worked with me. So from there on, I began to put on my own shows, and also from the very beginning I had a title for a show. In other words, there was a unity about having a title for a complete show. It wasn't pieces, you see. Then when you put them together, that made it one. So the whole thing became an environment.
Well, you've said that you've always known that you were going to be an artist from the time you were 3.5 years old, is that
well, as long as I can remember, yes. I think, and this is my feeling, now no one can say, is there a God? No one has seen him. Is there a this? We take things on faith a great deal, or we don't take it on faith, but we have a choice. Now, I have a feeling that when someone is willing to live and die for something, that means it's in the genes. I mean, because I don't think in one lifetime one could make an artist. Crusoe, a great singer, he couldn't make a voice, he could improve on the voice. But you're born with certainly, some people have black eyes, brown eyes, some have blue. I mean, we're born with the equipment, and if we recognize the equipment, we can fulfill that particular life. You see, now, when you can take anyone in public, say Garbo, or take Elizabeth Taylor. Now, if anyone tries to be them, it's ridiculous. And they play those roles, and they're right for them. And if anyone else tries it, the shoe doesn't fit. So I believe that artists who are willing to dedicate them, well, it isn't even a dedication, it's more of a celebration, actually, to live that way. I must tell you this, years ago in New York, someone said to me, you want to be an artist, what are you going to do when you find maybe you're a fourth-rate artist? Well, I've said two things. I thought if you're a fourth-rate artist, who's to judge? As far as I was concerned, I was an artist and I wanted to live my life that way, and I had the courage not to permit, or I didn't give anyone the right to superimpose on what I felt. I claimed my life. I still do. No one is living for me. No one is suffering for me. No one is supporting me. And I think the first thing you should do is stand up on your 2 feet and look in the mirror and like yourself and say, sure, this is my life and I'm going to live it.
What do you see now in what is obviously a changed relationship between museums and galleries? What do you see as their role and functions?
I don't see that there's a changed relationship. I mean, in the last 13 years, as far as I'm concerned, there isn't a changed relationship. I continue to bring to the attention of museums very consequential works by my artists, or works that I have that I acquire from collections. They continue to buy them. If anytime there's something very promising and new by a young artist, I continue to take museum directors and curators to see that work.
How does a young artist make your grade?
I see about 40 sets of slides a week. Artists come in here every day and leave their slides. I personally see every slide that's left. If something looks very interesting, super interesting, I'll go to the studio to see it. I see less today than I've ever seen before. I believe in really the democratization of art, and that although one movement dominates a moment, it doesn't mean that that movement is forever going to dominate that time. So that the gallery started in a very different way. It started in a way of showing artists as diverse as Louise Nevelson and Larry Bell, or Jean Dubuffet and Ernest Trova. So that it was a funny thing at the time. I had the ability to select artists from various places, and then my sensibility was much more austere than the sensibility of, let's say, the pop movements, or for the most part, color field. Before Ed Reinhardt died in '67, he came with me. We never did a show. He died about 3 months before we were going to do a show. But at that point already, the sensibility of the gallery had been formed. What was happening in California was very exciting to me in the '60s. It was art that suddenly became quite evident that art was something of the mind, not of the hand. When people like Larry Bell were making glass boxes and having them vacuum plated and becoming plexiglass prisms, it was very clear that it was a mental concept. The concept of craft has never excited me at all. I mean, there are extraordinary craftsmen, and one can forge an Andrew Wyeth very well, and he forges them himself. One can do a Rubens, and one can do a Raphael, and one can do a Mondrian. So craft isn't very interesting to me. What interests me is concepts, is the cognitive process of art, and that process is perception. You know, how is the artist's perception unique? I don't think that when you see the most extravagant, extraordinary exhibition of Louise Nevelson's work, you're really seeing the art. You know, these are maps or charts or clues to the process that makes the art. The art is Nevelson's perception of the world. The art is happening in Nevelson's head. These are the maps to that art. And I believe it's true with any artist. So that perceptual processes are what interest me. And in summary, the unique thing about the gallery is that every artist in this gallery is involved in vision. There's no artist that's involved in conceptual art that I'm involved with, or in kind of storytelling art or narrative art. But the art that I'm involved with is art that is something to further the perceptual processes themselves.
The word is that there is no dominant school of art at this time. There are those who seem to be concerned about it, and there are others who see it as a time of greater ferment than ever before. How do you view it?
Are you asking me or Louise?
Both of you.
Well, do you want to take it or should I take it? Okay. I think there is no dominant school. I think that it's, by comparison to the art that's been produced from the turn of the century to the present, there's a famine. The movements of the 60s, where every 2 years there was another movement, there was pop art and op art and minimal art and all coming after abstract expressionist art. And it was a time at which, I think one can understand if I put it in this perspective, the holistic image was broken with the Impressionists. That is to say, the total image became subordinated to the parts. When you begin to take apart an image, it comes apart much more quickly than it builds together. So the centuries of production, of building this holistic, total, perspective, realistic image was shattered at the turn of the century. And what we've been involved in all the disciplines is analysis and reductionism. The analytical viewpoint is, by definition, the analysis of the whole. So you have a series of artists who have each taken their aspect, their part of the perceptual process and worked on it. I mean, Albers is interested in the interchange of colors. It's a very tiny facet. He did it exquisitely well. Various artists have been involved with various things. So when you get to a point where all of the subsystems, as we know them, have been explored, what do? You don't have a next movement.
I do feel there has been, say when Warhol came on the market, and I'm going to compare him to something else which has nothing to do with it. When Warhol came on the market, he almost brought us a new point of view for the moment. No brushes, no oil paints. They seem like things like a has-been, gone forever. Then it compares to that little girl Twiggy that came on, and every other model looked heavy and gross. For that moment, she seemed right. You see, that was the moment in time, the parallel. But somehow, the god, what's his name, Warhol, he somehow twisted into another thing. And who saw that moment, well, it got emaciated, so that's one thing. Now, it is true that there isn't just one road. We take one road because that's what we want, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the ultimate. It is true that all of it, the body of creative people, will eventually make one road. Because look what is happening in the art world. One does a reflection here or a note here, or like Crispo did that 21-mile thing in California, or earth things, or now garden things they are making into. And whether you go with it or not, you have to admit that we are living, in spite of everything, in a very fertile time.
And for you, in a very fertile town.
Time.
But I'm saying for you in a fertile town as well. You've often commented how much New York has affected your perception.
Right.
In your recent memoir, Dawn's Plus Dusk, Conversations with Diana McCowan, you make an especially poetic reference to New York City. What about this town makes you sing?
Well, for me, this city and I were born in the right time. I don't quite give a damn about the dirt and things. Now, I live near the Bowery, down near Chinatown, Little Italy. I was looking out the window this morning, and toward the Bowery, and the buildings are so dilapidated you have no idea. And in these tenement houses, now this is this morning, these tenement houses, then there was, looked like a storm was coming, about 6 o'clock. And then there was a light. It made El Greco, wonderful Toledo, look like a tame picture by comparison. And in all of the tenements, there was one electric light, and it was in the furthest window. It wasn't in the middle. It was the furthest toward the sky. And I looked, and I thought, well, really, I don't know of any picture compared to it. So I think I live in heaven. I think it's marvelous. And now, you see, now I have relatives that come to New York, and they come visit me, and they say, why do you want to live in the slums? The streets are dirty, there's paper there and everything. But they never would sit down a minute and take a look. About 40 years ago, I went to Europe, and I went to Versailles and saw all the wonderful things. And then 40 years later, I went to Europe. I went to Versailles 40 years later, and it seemed to me that the Versailles shrunk. Shrunk. Now that, in a way, is a symbol of life. We start, and then somehow, every day, that's why I don't lie about my age or anything. I'm so jealous of my age, because of when I say something like that, I've got that whole magnificent background of living life almost every day. Sometimes you weep a little every day, sometimes you laugh a little every day, but you live life and with awareness.
I want to give a very special thanks to Arnold Glimcher, who has been indeed kind to let us come here tonight, and to Louise Nevelson, an amazing artist with a vision and energy all of her own. Thank you again to Arnold. I mean, obviously you are a master builder in your own right, too.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. I'm Barbara Lee Diamonstein.